If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you all know I have tried to make Threadling builds work as much as possible. To me, they are some of the most fun, and seeing your little green minions just fly around everywhere and kill everything for you is just a huge dopamine rush. This specific Threadling build is one I have made a while back, but with some returning artifact perks and even some buffs that we didn't have back in the day, this build is a whole lot better than what it used to be. There's a lot of synergy that goes on with this build, not only with Threadling creation, but also with suspending as well, and all of it plays together and makes this a very solid build. If you've never given a Threadling build a shot, this is one I would highly recommend, and I hope you all can have as much fun with it as I have been. But really quick before we jump into it, if you all enjoy or learn anything new, consider doing all the normal YouTube stuff. All the support really does go a long way, and I truly appreciate it. Also, if you'd like to join my Discord server to play with members of our community, or you can just hang out, all the links will be down below for that as well. But without further ado, let's jump into the updated suspending minions build. All right, first things first, let's take a look at our exotic armor, and that is going to be the Swarmers. So this has the exotic perk Swarmers. Destroying a tangle spawns a Threadling. Your Threadlings unravel targets that they damage. Bungie went real creative with the exotic perk thing for this exotic, but it does imply what this exotic does. With this build, every single tangle you break, you're going to make 2 Threadlings, and every Threadling that you create from everything is going to unravel targets. This is going to play a massive role in our artifact, and this also is just going to allow us to have the entire battlefield unravel. With the amount of Threadling generation you'll have with this build, you will literally always see unravel and Threadlings running around 24/7, and this just helps out in making that playstyle possible. Plus, you do get the added benefit of your tangles being able to make Threadlings. Now, your tangles are going to be extremely important in this build, and if we jump into the subclass here, we're going to be running the Wanderer. So tangles you throw attach to targets and detonate into a suspending burst. Destroying a tangle creates a suspending burst after a short delay. Threadling final blows create a tangle. So you can start to see where the suspending aspect of the build is going to come into play. This is obviously going to synergize greatly with our exotic armor, because now every single time we destroy a tangle, not only are we making Threadlings, but we also are creating a suspending burst. You can either shoot the tangle itself and it will just make a suspending burst wherever the tangle is located, or you can pick it up and throw it. Either way, you're going to be making Threadlings and suspending, and it is very, very strong. Now, the other benefit of this, where it said your Threadlings can make tangles, doesn't really matter at all, because your Swarmers are already unraveling targets with the Threadling, and that in return is going to make a tangle. So we're not really taking advantage of that part at all, but again, to be fair, you don't really have to, because we're going to be making tangles everywhere, because we're going to have unravel everywhere. Now, our next aspect is actually going to be Weaver's Call. So activate your class ability to weave 3 Threadlings and deploy any Threadlings you have perched. Targets defeated by stranded damage have a chance to generate a perched Threadling. So this is where the newly buffed part of the build comes in. Back when I made this build, however long ago it was, the part where dealing strain damage could make a Threadling was not a part of Weaver's Call. This is an amazing benefit, because 90% of the damage we are doing with this build is going to be strain damage, so we are passively just getting perched Threadlings. And if you don't know how perched Threadlings work, essentially if a Threadling can't find a target, it will just come back to you, and you could have up to 5 on you at all times. But with this, just killing things is going to just make a perched Threadling. And again, you can use your class ability to send all these Threadlings out, and it is very normal to send up to 5+ at all times, because of the amount of Threadlings you are making, just because of all the passive strain damage you are doing. Weaver's Call is absolutely disgusting with this build, and not only are we going to be taking advantage of the passive benefit of the perched Threadlings, we also are going to be able to spam our class ability a lot, so we can constantly send out Threadlings that way as well. And the way we're going to be doing that is actually with Thread of Mind. So whenever we defeat a suspended target, it's going to grant us class ability energy. Obviously, with the Wanderer being able to suspend targets, we're going to be able to kill them while they're suspended, and we get class ability energy back for Weaver's Call. But once we get into our weapons, we're going to be able to buff this up a lot more. But for now, our next fragment is just going to be Thread of Warding. So whenever we pick up an overpower, we get Woven Mail. This is great for your survivability. And all honesty, if you don't want to take this, you could opt in to take something like Rebirth, so you can make even more Threadlings with your strand weapon. I don't particularly think you need this, and I think having the damage reduction from Woven Mail is more important, but again, it's up to you and whatever you want to do. But our next fragment is going to be Thread of Evolution, so Threadlings travel farther and deal additional damage. This is a no-brainer to take, since we are obviously playing heavily into Threadlings. We want to make them do as much damage as possible. And then finally, Thread of Generation, so whenever we deal damage, it generates grenade energy. This is any damage we're doing with the builds, all our Threadlings, all our Unravel, our weapon damage. anything we're doing is actually going to generate us grenade energy. Now, for our grenades, I like to run the Threadling grenade here because it's just more Threadlings. Obviously, we're playing into a Threadling build. More Threadlings is always better. But I do want to make a note. If you want to run the Shackle grenade here, you absolutely can, since we are playing into Suspend as well. This in return will obviously grant you more class ability energy for Weaver's Call, but our weapon is going to play a very crucial part into suspending targets as well. So that's why I opted in just to take Threadling. But just know Shackle is also a very strong option. And if you're going into something like a GM with this, it may be a little bit more beneficial to take Shackle over the Threadling grenade, unless you just want to start spreading Unravel everywhere just with your grenade. Now, next up, you do have Arcane Needle, which is obviously a very strong Warlock melee. It's going to pair extremely well with some of our artifact perks. You can just throw this. You're going to Unravel everything as well. So between this and your Threadlings, again, everything is going to be unraveled. For the class ability, I like to run Healing Rift. Honestly, it's up to you, whichever one you want to take, but this is just better for the survivability. Again, you can just throw it down. All the Threadlings are going to come out. And then for your super, just note Needle Storm is actually a very good one-off super. This also makes Threadlings as well, so this will pair with things like Thread of Evolution. So you can do a ton of damage with your super. So if you ever see a single target, just make sure you throw this on them and you're going to delete them. Now, for the weapons with this build, the only main one you need to take is Wishkeeper. There's a lot of benefits that this will provide with the build, but mostly it has the exotic perk Snare Weaver. So precision hits and final blows build energy toward a Snare Weaver arrow that can be fired from the hip. On impact, Snare Weaver arrows creates a pattern of traps that suspend nearby targets. It also has Silkbound Slayer, so this weapon deals bonus damage to suspended targets, gain faster draw time for a short duration when you suspend a target from any source, or damage a suspended target with this weapon. And then what makes this bow perfect is that it can get hatchling. So precision final blows are rapidly defeating targets with this weapon spawns a Threadling at the target's location. So this bow quite literally synergizes with everything in our subclass. We can make more Threadlings with hatchling, and it's extremely easy to get precision shots with a bow, especially since it is an exotic bow, so it's getting that increased damage to the lower tier enemies. You're going to be making Threadlings all the time. But the other benefit is that now every single time you're getting headshots making Threadlings, you're also building up these Snare Weaver stacks, and with just 3 headshot kills specifically, you will get max charges of this, and then you can just suspend a target. When you suspend targets, you're also getting the other benefits, that increased draw time, the increased damage of all that sort. But the main thing is this plays back into our subclass with Thread of Mind, so defeating all those suspended targets is going to grant us class ability energy. So between this bow and the Wanderer constantly suspending targets, and if you do opt in to take the Shackle grenade, you're going to be able to spam your class ability to constantly spam Weaver's Call, and you're going to always be able to make these additional Threadlings and even get rid of all the perched Threadlings that you have on you from the passive benefit that Weaver's Call does provide. So between all that and then Thread of Generation just constantly granting you grenade energy for doing damage 24/7, you're going to be able to spam your class ability and your Threadling grenade over and over again, or Shackle grenade if you take that, and it's just another way to constantly have Threadlings everywhere. I cannot stress how strong Wishkeeper is with this exact setup, but obviously I know not everyone has this, and you might not specifically want to play into this. So if you want to just take something like Rufus' Fury with Demo Hatchling, this also is going to work extremely well. Just note that you will want to take off Thread of Mind, because you're not going to be getting that much spend with this unless you are taking Shackle grenades. Between Shackle and Wanderer, you probably could keep Thread of Mind on, but if you are running the Threadling grenade, I would take off Thread of Mind, probably just throw on Thread of Rebirth to make even more Threadlings. And since the Threadlings are perched, if you are just dealing damage with your gun, they will pop off of you. You just won't get the fun dopamine hit of just having 8 Threadlings come off of you pretty much all the time, because you can just spam your class ability all the time. But you still will get the passive benefit of this, and it's still very, very good. But if you want the ultimate build that you can take into endgame content and stuff like that, Wishkeeper is sure going to be the play, because Suspend obviously can stun Unstoppable. It can low-key stun Anti-Barrier as well. And overall, again, with that Suspend, you're going to be able to spam your class ability because of Thread of Mind, and you can just have Threadlings coming out everywhere. Now, for other weapons, it's honestly up to you. I like to just run a Fusion Rifle for single target damage. If you do want to run a Machine Gun with Hatchling, this is also very good, because this will give us Overload if we do take it in the artifact. So between a Machine Gun with Overload alongside, obviously, Unstoppable with our bow, again, kind of suspend. Also, we will have Unraveling Rounds as well, which when we get to the artifact perk, we'll mention all that. And Unraveling Rounds does provide anti-barrier, so this bow will also have anti-barrier. There's a lot of good weapon synergies going on with this build. And let's jump into the artifact now and talk about how we're going to improve this even more. All right, so first things first, we're going to be taking Unraveling Orbs. So if we pick up an Overpower or a Tangle, it's going to grant us Strand Weapons Unraveling Rounds. Since we're going to be able to make Tingles all the time, since we're going to be able to pick Orbs up all the time, this means we will have permanent Unraveling Rounds for our Wish Keeper, which again in return will grant it anti-barrier. Now we can also play into this with Horde Shuttle, so damaging unravel targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a Threadling. Since we're going to be able to unravel targets all the time with our swarmers, with our melee, and also now with our weapon, because of unraveling orbs, we're going to be able to make more Threadlings. And the weapon itself is already making Threadlings, but now just dealing damage is also making Threadlings. So again, Threadling generation literally everywhere. And then, like I was saying, if you do take overload machine guns, you will be able to stun every single champion with this build without really having to swap anything out. But in all honesty, that is pretty much the only artifact perks you need for this specific build. Obviously, if you want to take something like particle reconstruction for your future rifles, that's very good, or more, special ammo with dreadful finisher, definitely be sure to equip those. But the main two is just unraveling orbs and Horde Shuttle. Those two alone make this build ridiculously strong. But now jumping into stats, I would definitely go with 100 resilience to get your 30% damage reduction, and then I opt in to take 100 discipline just so I can spam my grenade even more often. For the final stats, always go on recovery, because this is going to grant you increased class ability regen, so that means you can spam Weaver's Call even more. So obviously we're just playing into spamming our class ability and our grenade as much as possible, so we can just have as much Threadlings on the battlefield as much as possible. But now for the armor mods, this is what I'm running if you like to copy them down. But as a further look, I'm going to be running a harmonic siphon, so Rabbit Strain Open Final Blows can make an orb of power. Now our Wish Keeper can just make orbs, which again is going to proc things like Threat of Warding, grant us armor charge, and some other stuff, which we'll get into the build later. And then Ashes to Assets, so we gain bonus super energy on grenade kills. If you are running the Shackle Grenade, I would not take this, but if you are running Threadlings, your Threadling grenades can get kills. This will grant you extra super energy, which is nice. Again, Needle Storm is a great super. Just note that Ashes to Assets is only going to work on the Threadlings that you throw with your grenade specifically. All the Threadlings you're making with everything else is not going to proc this, unfortunately, but if you do get kills with your Threadling grenade, you will get this. Next up is just Heavy Ammo Finder. Specifically, since I am running Wish Keeper, you will get more benefit out of this, so I can just make some heavy ammo for whatever I am running. Now for my arms, I do like to run a harmonic loader, so increase the reload speed of strand weapons. Now if you are running Wish Keeper, if you do get the suspend, you don't need this too much. This does still provide a small multiplier, but if you want to swap this out for literally anything else, you totally can. I just like this more for the neutral game, and if I ever do take Wish Keeper off and run something like Rufus's, I can just have this ready to go. But again, swap this out for whatever you want to. Next up is just bolstering detonations, so I get class ability energy when I deal damage with a grenade. So now my Threadling grenades that I throw out are going to grant me class ability energy, so I can just proc Weaver's Call more often. And then a momentum transfer, so when I cause damage with a grenade, it reduces my melee cooldown. Again, your melee is pretty nice with this, since you can't just make any target unravel. That will play back to our artifact perk, so we can just throw a melee, do weapon damage. Now we're going to make Threadlings. This is very good. You can obviously pair this with things like Euphony if you are using this in any sort of DPS situation. I should have pointed this out in the weapon part of the video, but for everyone that stayed this long, there's a little extra tip for you. And in all honesty, if you want to swap out momentum transfer for another bolstering detonation, you could. There are diminishing returns if you do take multiple of the same mod. And again, in all honesty, if you want to take 3 bolstering detonations, you will get 20% of your class ability back every single grenade you throw. So that's something you can do as well. It's totally up to you with the mods here, but just make sure you are taking at least 1 bolstering detonation. Now for our chest piece, always go through resistant mods. Just be sure to swap this out for whatever content you're going into. And then for our boots, I do like to take a recuperation, so this will give us a small chunk of health when we pick an orb up. This is going to be good because again, we will get woven mail when we pick an orb up. Alongside that, we're going to get health back for our survivability. Also take an innervation, so this will reduce the grenade cooldown whenever we pick an orb up. And then pairing that with an absolution, so it's going to reduce all our ability cooldowns when we pick an orb up. This just means now we're going to be making orbs with our Wish Keeper. We can pick them up. We're going to get some survivability, and we're going to get even more ability energy to make even more Threadlings. And then finally for our class item, I do like to run a bomber, so I can reduce their grenade cooldown when we use our class ability. Kind of like bolstering detonation, throwing the grenade is going to give us class ability. Now using our class ability is going to give us grenade. We can then pair that with things like powerful attraction, so we can pick all the orbs up around us whenever we use our class ability. So not only are we making Threadlings, we're now also going to be picking all the orbs up, which will proc literally everything else in the build up here. And then finally, utility kickstart, so whenever we use our class ability, it's going to grant us extra class ability energy back. This is based on our armor charge system, so again, picking all these orbs up will grant us armor charge. So the more we have, the more energy we are going to get back, and this was going to allow us to spam our Weaver's Call even more, especially pairing that with Threat of Mind. You're going to be able to use these 24/7. But then for the final part of the build, this is the Transmog I'm running. Obviously I went for a very strand theme look. I took advantage of the strand armor set in some of the strand shaded here. What is it? Twisting strands is literally what it's called. But I will say the helmet here, which is the helmet I think from Season of the Wish, I'm pretty sure, it straight up looks like a Threadling. Like, I mean, obviously it's not like a 1-for-1, but especially with this strand shader, you look like you have a Threadling on your head, and it obviously pairs super well with the build we're going for here. Now, Swarmers, honestly, I tried to take advantage of the ornament, but I think the normal ones low-key look better, especially with the shader. And then I'm pretty sure this is the Season 3 class item. I don't know. It looked like aliens, obviously with Threadling, stuff like that. Either way, though, if you want to make your Warlock literally look like a Threadling, at least in the head, definitely be sure to copy this down. But that's going to do it all for this build. Let me know what you all think about in the comments below. I absolutely adore these types of builds. They're so fun to put together. Obviously, I know they're not the strongest thing in the game. If you still want to run the Bleak Watcher turret, or even another build that I'm going to have coming out pretty soon, for sure, go on to run those. But if you just want to switch things up, have a little bit more fun, this is definitely one I would recommend trying out. Again, your whole screen is literally going to be covered in green. Low-key, you will get frame drops as well, unless you just have a giga PC that you're running on, because there's just so much stuff going on your screen, but it is just so much fun. Anyway, though, that's going to do it all for me. I wish you all the best of luck in putting this build together for yourself. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.